morning, friends. Welcome back from spring break. We all hope that you had such a great break from schoolwork and from doing our lessons every day. And we are excited to be back and learning with you guys starting this week again. So our lesson today is titled, What Are Poems Made Of? I want you to think in your head, what are some poems that maybe we've read this year? I want you to think maybe back to our module about freaky frogs. Can you remember any frogs, any type of frog that we maybe have read a poem about? Take a few seconds and think about it. If you remember reading about the wood frog, you are completely right. We also read a poem about the glass frog. Those are the two examples that I thought of when I thought about poems that we've read. Now, our question right here, what are poems made of? So friends, this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be looking at the structure of a poem. That's kind of like the building blocks of a poem. What are poems made of? What are the different parts? How does that help us understand what the poem is about? So we're going to go ahead and start with, there we go, a poem that you might have already heard, Jack and Jill. Now, before we read our poem together, I want you to look at our top corner up here. Our words in the yellow, I have two words here, and these are some vocabulary words that are going to be important in our lesson. My first vocabulary word is stanza. Can you say it? Stanza. Now, friends, a stanza is multiple verses of a poem. There are no stanzas in this poem, but the poem that we're going to be reading next has 1, 2, 3 separate stanzas. How many stanzas are in this poem? Just one. Our next vocabulary word is verse. So a verse is an individual line. So take a second and count how many verses are in my Jack and Jill poem. If you got 6 verses, you would be absolutely right. We have 1 stanza and 6 verses in our Jack and Jill poem. Let's go ahead and read it. Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. So we've already talked about this poem that has 1 stanza and 6 verses. Now think in your head, what is this poem about? What is happening in this poem? Take a second and think about it. In this poem, I think that the speaker is telling us a story of these 2 people, Jack and Jill right here, a story about what happened when they went up somewhere to get something, and Jack, what? Fell down. And then what did Jill do? Tumbled after him. So this is just a short little story, this poem is, about something that happened to these 2 kids. So the next poem that we're going to look at is actually in Spanish. The title of our poem is Arroz con leche. So I'm going to read it quickly and then we'll talk about it briefly. Arroz con leche, me quiero casar con una señorita de la capital. Que sepa coser, que sepa bailar, que sepa abrir la puerta para ir a jugar. Con esta sí, con esta no. Con esta señorita me caso yo. So this poem, we already talked about. Do you remember how many stanzas we said this poem has? 1, 2, 3. 3 stanzas. See if you can figure out how many verses are in your poem. Now I'm going to count 2 and we'll see if we get to the same answer. Did you get 13 verses? If you did, great job. So we're going to talk a little bit more in our next slides about how poems break apart in the different building blocks, the different parts of our poems. All right, so we're on lesson 15 today. And this lesson is, what are poems made of? What are poems made of? Our learning target. Go ahead and grab your bow and arrow. Get your string, pull it back, shoot once. Pew. All right, let's read it together. When you understand the parts of a poem, you can see how each line and stanza builds on what came before it. So this is like when we were looking at our Peter Pan books and we were looking at the different chapters. And we said, how does chapter 8 build on chapter 7? How does chapter 9 build on chapter 8? So we're going to be doing the same thing with how does our second stanza build on our first stanza. We're going to be kind of connecting those dots today. All right, let's go ahead and read our section right here. It says, many poems tell stories. Think of Jack and Jill that we just read. Like stories, they have a speaker who talks to the reader. They also have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Poems are made up of lines that are called verses. A group of verses is called a stanza. We talked about those two words already, verses and stanza. The stanzas in a poem work together to tell a story. Each stanza tells an important part of the poem's story, and the stanzas build on each other to present ideas and tell a story. So I want you to go ahead and find the bolded words. Remember, we talked about bold words when we talked about our informational text features. I see 3 of them. We've already talked about 2 of them. What is our third bold word? Speaker. Speaker is our third bold word. And speaker is, in a poem, who is talking to the reader? Who is talking to the reader? All right, so we've talked about our 3 bold words. These are the words that you're going to be looking for today. I have 3 of them. The first word is a speaker. And who is a speaker in a poem? It's who's talking to the reader. A stanza, you can see right here, is a group of verses. And a verse is just one. So if I'm looking at this picture, 1 verse, 2 verses, 3 verses, 4, 5, 6 verses in this first stanza. So these are important words to remember as we're looking at poetry, because our main question, what are poems made of? Verses and stanzas. All right, so I have these words again in the upper corner so we remember to look for them, to think about what they are for each poem that we read. So this poem's title is A Penguin's Life. Go ahead and look at your picture right here. What do you think this poem is going to be about? Probably a penguin. Something about their life, what they do, how they live. Sometimes, friends, you will see that stanzas, remember stanzas are groups of verses and poems, are numbered. So you can see that this is stanza 1 and this is stanza 2. So how many stanzas do we have in this poem? We have 2. Now let's look at our verses. How many verses are in stanza 1? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 verses. How many verses are in stanza 2? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. How many verses are in the entire poem? 4 plus 4 would be 8. All right, so friends, we've talked about this poem before even reading it. We looked at what it is made of, stanzas and verses. Now I want you to be on the lookout for our third vocabulary word. Think, who is the speaker in this poem? Who is it that is talking to the reader? All right, so let's read A Penguin's Life. I'm a bird with little wings, but they don't make me fly. The air above is not for me. The ocean is my sky. In icy seas I swoop and soar, a swimmer fast and bold. You'd swim fast if you were me. The water sure is cold. Oh my goodness. All right, so we read our poem together. What did you think of this poem? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Now, My original question, who's the speaker in this poem? Who is talking to the reader in this poem? Is it a teacher or a kid? If you're not sure, go ahead and look at our first verse again. In our first stanza, I am a bird with little wings. So who's the speaker? Who's talking to the reader? The penguin. The penguin is our speaker for this specific poem. All right, friends, so go ahead and read up here with me. It says, think. You've learned what verses and stanzas are and how stanzas make meaning in a poem. How do the stanzas in a penguin's life work together to present an idea about penguins? Complete the chart to show how the stanzas work together and what idea they develop. So we're going to go ahead and find the idea of stanza 2 and of the whole poem. We already have the idea of stanza 1. It's penguins cannot fly. Let's look back and see if that's truly the idea. I'm a bird with little wings, but they don't make me fly. The air above is not for me. The ocean is my sky. Penguins cannot fly. Yes, that is the idea of stanza 1. It's saying the penguin has wings, but it doesn't fly in the air. The penguin lives in the sea. It says the ocean is my sky. So let's look at stanza 2 and see if we can find the big idea of stanza 2. In icy seas I swoop and soar, a swimmer fast and bold. You'd swim fast if you were me. The water sure is cold. So this is talking about wings and flying. Our second stanza is talking about what? The penguin swimming. So I might write an idea of stanza 2. Penguin is a good swimmer, or the penguin is very fast at swimming. I think that would be a good idea for stanza 2. And the idea of the whole poem. So now we're looking at stanza 1 and stanza 2, and we're mushing them together and looking at the big idea of both. I think the big idea might be, let me read my poem one more time again to make sure that I remember what's going on. I'm a bird with little wings, but they don't make me fly. The air above is not from me, the ocean is my sky. In icy seas I swoop and soar, a swimmer fast and bold. You'd swim fast if you were me, the water sure is cold. So I think maybe it's talking about, this poem tells me how a penguin moves, how a penguin lives. Does the penguin fly? No. I would maybe say the idea of the whole poem is penguins live in the water and are great swimmers, or penguins do not use their wings to fly, but they swim quickly in the ocean. So that's maybe what my idea of the whole poem would be. The speaker is just telling us about how penguins live. All right, so now what we're going to do is we'll read the last 2 lines of the poem. And friends, lines, same thing as verses, okay? It's just one. The first line, the second line. How do these lines change how the poem makes you feel? And as a reminder, we have our 3 vocabulary words that we're going to try and use. So let's look at the last 2 lines of the poem. You'd swim fast if you were me. The water sure is cold. Let's think about it. What do you think? How do you feel when you read these last 2 lines? You'd swim fast if you were me. The water sure is cold. I think it's kind of funny. I don't think the penguin is actually swimming fast because the water's cold. I think that the penguin, the speaker, is kind of trying to be a little bit funny, trying to tell a joke, maybe make us smile or laugh. So let's look back at the rest of our poem. I'm a bird with little wings, but they don't make me fly. So that is just a fact. It's telling us that penguins have wings, but not to fly. The air above is not for me. The ocean is my sky. So they're saying that instead of being in the sky like a lot of birds, they're in the ocean. In icy seas I swoop and soar, a swimmer fast and bold. So that's telling us that penguins are really great swimmers. And then our last 2 lines, you'd swim fast if you were me. The water sure is cold. And then it's that little bit at the end that kind of makes us smile or laugh. So it's at the end, it's kind of a funny reason for why penguins are good swimmers, which reminds me of when we made our own pourquoi-tails, remember? When we looked at something with animals and made up a story about why that happened. So a pourquoi-tail might be, penguins are fast swimmers because they actually hate cold water, and so they have to keep moving. Is it true? Nope, made up. So the purpose of these last two lines are to make the reader smile or laugh. All right, friends, so right now, what we're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and go back to your main page, your assignment for today, and you're gonna click on the assignment link, and we're gonna have a different video, and we're gonna go through together another poem. Before we go do that though, let's recap really quick at our 3 vocabulary words that are super important. What is the speaker? Is the speaker the author of the poem? No. If we look back at our penguin's life, this was written by a human, right? So somebody wrote this poem for us to read. But did we say the speaker is a human? No, who's the speaker? I'm a bird with little wings. The speaker is the penguin. You have to look at the actual poem to know who the speaker is, okay? So don't get tripped up on that. The author is not necessarily the speaker. Our stanzas are groups of what? Verses. And verses are just one line at a time. All right, so let's go back and look at our learning target for today. Our learning target, when you understand the parts of a poem, the verses, and the stanzas, you can see how each line and stanza builds on what came before it. So we're looking to connect from one stanza to the next stanza. All right, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in, and good luck on your assignment and your quiz.